Welcome to the Jack McDowell School for Leadership Development is an arm of the Salvation Army Evangeline Booth College, Southern Territory based in Atlanta, Georgia. SLD empowers spiritually motivated leaders to grow in character, compassion, and competencies. Let's jump right in.
Welcome to Tuesday Conversations and Coffee. Welcome back. We've had a number of them over the course of this quarter, and we're looking forward to being with you again for the next 4 weeks, where I have Dr. Len Sweet with me, who is no stranger to the Salvation Army. Actually, he's one of our tribe, just doesn't wear our uniform. And we're grateful that you're with us, Dr. Sweet. I know him as an instructor and as a friend of the Salvation Army. So I'm grateful to have had this interaction with you and that you've taken time to do this with us. Thank you so much. He's also an author of many books, one of which I've just almost finished up, Rings of Fire, Walking Faith Through a Volcanic Future. And that book certainly is a timely book for what we're going through in our day. Also From Tablet to Table, I love that book. But my all-time favorite was Jesus Manifesto. I loved that book, and I go back to that book often. So thank you for the way you portrayed Jesus there. Just such a, almost sitting in front of me is Jesus, and this is how I see him. So thank you for that. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Sweet, who is going to set up one of two conversations that we're going to have on gratitude. And then week 3 and 4, we'll be talking about the need to live incarnationally. And the 4th week, we're going to be talking about the necessity of working from a posture of hope. And our hope is Jesus. He's a person, not just a concept. So we're going to be talking about that. Dr. Sweet, I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my joy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And I really feel, as you said, a part of your family. And my mother was a Pilgrim Holiness preacher, and she took us to Salvation Army meetings, and she always told us that there was basically no difference between the Salvationists and the holiness people in the Pilgrim Church. So I've always felt a kinship and a kindred spirit with you all. So thank you.
Yeah. So you're going to be talking about gratitude today. And I think you wanted to go ahead and set that up for the now moment. I'm just going to turn this over to you and let you tell us.
Okay. Well, I wanted, this is a hard time to experience gratitude, if you will, because we're in the midst of this pandemonium and all that COVID has brought over the past, since actually March of this year. And I want to begin with saying that even in the midst of something like this thing called a pandemic, Paul gave us a mantra to get to the peace that passes all understanding. And notice it came in triplets. One is be anxious in nothing. And then be prayerful in everything. That's the kind of meat of the sandwich. But then third is be thankful, be grateful in anything. That's the hard one. In many ways, you can't do it unless you've first done the first two: anxious, nothing, prayerful, everything, thankful, anything. Then the peace that passes all understanding will guide our hearts and guide our minds in Christ Jesus. So we start with this spirit of gratitude and thankfulness in all things, in anything. And our ancestors, I learned this in Sunday school, and many of you might have too, had another way of putting it other than the 7, I call them the 7 first words of the church. You know what the 7 last words are? We never did it that way before. Well, the 7 first words are anxious, nothing, prayerful, everything, thankful, anything, peace. And our ancestors had another way of putting it, and they put it in the form of a song. And it went like this: when upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you. The Lord has done. Count your blessings Name them one by one, count your blessings, see what God has done, count your blessings, name them one by one, count your many blessings, see what God has done. And so we're gonna do in the next couple of sessions just some count your blessings. And I'm gonna kind of itemize, and we'll see how much we have time for, but what I say are 15, and I'm sure there are a lot more, but just the 15 blessings that I immediately think of when I think of coming out of the COVID curse. Now, we know it's God's style to do the best in the midst of the worst. God can turn the worst and make it into the best. God can turn a curse and turn it into a blessing. So this lockdown and the legacy of the lockdown, you say, well, what good can come out of that? How can good come out of being put under house arrest? You know, and yet this is how God works, and God works by turning curses into blessings, turning gravestones into resurrection moments. And so I want to kind of begin by saying that as we look at these and we express to God our gratitude for living through this moment, I also want to deal with the opposite, which is, yes, we're here by divine appointment. I mean, God chose you and me to serve this present age, our calling to fulfill. That's a great Charles Wesley hymn. A charge to keep we have. We've been given a charge. And part of these theories that you're being they're being brought to you is helping you keep your charge. We're charging you in so that you can keep the charge, so that you can be charged up for keeping the charge. But the charge is to serve this present age, our calling to fulfill, not the age we wish we had. I mean, I'm totally unprepared for this moment. I totally would not choose to serve this present age. I'm a historian and a futurist both, but I live. You see, my furniture around me is all Victorian antiques, and I live in the 19th century in my furniture. But you get to pick your furniture. You don't get to pick your moment. And the moment that God has given for you and for me is now. God still does arrange marriages, and God arranged to marry you and me to this moment. And so we're going to be held accountable one day before God. How did we keep our charge? And we can say, well, you know, you gave me a charge for that lockdown period, that COVID-19. And I didn't really like that moment. I didn't like the 21st century. I really did. So I really did effective ministry for the 1970s, or I did really good ministry for the 1990s. Yeah, but I called you for the 21st century. So we've got to live our moment, the moment that God has given us. And even though, I mean, I'm not prepared for it, but God has chosen. Hey, God sees differently. God thinks that you and I have something special to give and unique to offer to this moment, or else we would not be here. So this is a moment in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and the conversation takes place where Frodo says, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And Gandalf replies, so do we all. So do we all who live to see such times. That is not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you. That's a word that goes to each one of us, is that we have to decide what to do with this moment, this very important moment where there's a whole new world seeming to be born. There's a whole new normal that's seeming to come to life. And so how do we serve faithfully in this moment? One of the first things I want to say is, because this goes with all 15 blessings that I'm going to talk about, is that we have been put under house arrest by and large, and we've retreated to our shells, our sheltered cocoons. And when we come out, after having been in them for a while, we will experience shell shock. Now, you've been on the front lines, many of you, but the people that you're ministering with, so you've been out there already. But the people that you're ministering with, when they come out, it's a world that of people that are racked in fear, and where there is collective trauma, especially a lingering trauma, people stop trusting each other. The psychological scarring of this lockdown could last for decades. This is a lockdown generation. You're going to be dealing with kids for the next 20, 30 years. Their defining moment in their growing up period was the lockdown. It's going to be a generation of that's going to be increasingly inward looking and self-reliant. They're going to want to circle the wagons. It's going to be a resurgence of tribalism and survivalism. Uh, So the missional focus for that kind of a world that is forming around us as we come out of this pandemic is treating people with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and this lockdown mentality, this closed down mentality is going to affect people's psyche and psychology. And you're also going to see this, 62% of people were not affected financially by COVID-19. In other words, of all the things that were shut down, 62% of people just said it didn't affect them at all. 38% of people were severely affected by COVID-19 financially and economically. So once again, we're seeing the polarization. The rich are getting richer. 62% said no impact financially. The rest of us are entering into a deep depression, and it's a depression that's going to last. It's a depression physically, financially, spiritually, morally. It's a deep depression that is going to be the missional agenda of the future. A depression and a post-traumatic stress disorder that we are going to have to deal with. So I wanted just to begin with that kind of missional frame for the moment that we're in, and as I introduce each one of these blessings. So here's blessing number one. I am grateful for this. I'm so grateful for this. Are you ready to hear it? The building of the church is not a building. I mean, it took a pandemic to kick the church out of this heretical notion that the ecclesia is an edifice. Where did we get this idea? The confusion of the church with a building is fatal to mission, and that is what we have done. Now, you Salvationists haven't gone there by and large. I mean, as John Wesley said, the world is my parish. It's the streets where the church is the church. But there's been much of the church that has been so bought into this that the church is a building. I go to church, which means I go to a building. Now, I want to say I think we'll always have places of worship. We'll always have buildings. I personally find certain church structures enlivening resources to follow the way of Christ. They're not just a place where we worship God, a place with which we worship God. I worship God better in some physical places than others. But we haven't built the kind of best churches where I find my best worship in centuries. These are cathedrals, and steeples. For example, I love steeples, but steeples used to be signs of hope and healing to communities and to a nation, and they've long ago lost that luster. They're now contentious signs of our public life and our public spaces. So we have been cured of this understanding that you need a building to express your faith. And this has been a blessing. As I said, we'll always have some forms of buildings. We'll always need to come together periodically. But the church itself is not a building, and nobody can argue that anymore. And everybody is I think, aware of that now. And so that's number one. Number two, there's a new front door for the church, and that's the internet. The internet is the new front door. Now, many of us have been on the front lines calling for this for decades. Ever since Al Gore invented the internet. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't Al Gore. It was actually Tim Berners-Lee who made the adjustments that made the internet possible in the early 1990s. But one global lockdown did to the resistance to installing an internet front door to our churches that 3 decades of books and lectures and seminars failed to do. I cannot be more grateful to God for this. The church, in the business world, you're hearing WFA, work from anywhere. We need to hear CFA, church from anywhere. We need to be a church that sees itself as from anywhere, a community of people that are now online, learning to be a community of faith in our native digital culture. And for a while, this was deemed as white privilege, racism, elitism, an affront to the faith once delivered to all the saints. I mean, I've been accused of all those things in arguing for the internet. And now it's not an option, it's an imperative. Jesus invites us into a new relationship with reality, and this is our new reality, okay? And reality has melted from these exploding rings of fire, and we walk in a new world where the soil is lava rich. And the good news is that lava grows best. I mean, what grows best in lava rich soil? Well, coffee does. So I'm a coffee drinker, so I'm really happy about that. But it's a whole new terrain that we're on. And so I celebrate this. I can't tell you how tired I am of having to fight this battle. You cannot, every salvationist, you need a good internet front door. But here's the danger. And the danger is called colonialism. Colonialism is when you impose on another culture your culture, right? So there's the danger of me going as a missionary to China. Hi, Chinese, I'm Len Sweet, and I'm here to transform your culture with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, I guarantee you that the kind of gospel of Jesus Christ that I have in mind is not it's not an indigenous gospel. It's a gospel that is being posed on them, and it's going to look a lot like me, but I'm Western. I don't look Chinese. I don't have Asian rituals. I don't have Asian understanding and Asian. No, I was in an African church about 10 years ago outside of a little community. I think it was about a 3 hours drive from Johannesburg. And I was all excited. You're going to preach from a real, authentic African church line. Okay, well, that's great. And so when I got there, sure enough, we went out into the savannas, and there was this little church, this little white church, way back in the field, and the people were in their African garb, and I was so excited. And they said, it's such a beautiful day. Let's just move all our chairs and go outside under the boab tree. I'm going, oh, this is really going to be great. And so we all get under there, and they begin worship, and the first song they sang was Shout to the Lord. And I'm going, I came all the way around the world to hear a Hillsong song. I mean, where's the African, distinctly African sound of, where are the drums? Where's the dancing? Where's the unique African rhythm? And And all I got was, so this is called colonialism, where you come in and impose your culture, your music, your way of doing things on another culture. And that's what we've done by and large online. We've imposed a Gutenberg print culture on a Google world, or what I call a TGIF world: Twitter, TikTok, Google, Instagram, Facebook world. We have to find a way to indigenize the church and the gospel in this digital world, this TGIF world. So an online church means a 24/7 church. It's not a Sunday church or a nod to God hour church, or it's a whole different way of doing church online and creating online community than what we're used to. It means that your space, we used to have, pastors used to have studies, then they had offices because we kind of sold out the corporate culture. But now we're needing to see ourselves as having a studio. A studio is both an artistic, in a throwback to the artistic sense of the artistic studio, where you work with a team of apprentices and you all work on projects together, and you live together. And at the same time, also a sound room where you can go in and record, and there's no distractions. You got 24/7 access to your whole community, just like this. So it's all I'm seeing basically online right now are Gutenberg tracks and trajectories in a Google world. And I need to see, and I think what the church deserves is an authentic witness in a digital culture, and the digital culture.
Like an Acts 2 presentation in an Acts 17 environment.
Bingo. Exactly right. That's a great way to put it, Joanne. It's a great way to put it. Yeah. So that's going to be, it's not going to be easy. It's a digital ecclesiology that I'm calling for, really. But truly, we are not in Kansas anymore, okay? And we need to walk this yellow brick road together. We got to find a new way together to be church together. And we got to know up front that those are going to sign up. They're going to people sign up for it, but there will be among them that go on this walk a tin man, a scarecrow, a cowardly lion, and total, but we all need to make the journey together. We all need to be together.
Well, the difference is we're not going back to Kansas. And the truth is that's what the church is trying to do right now. Is trying to, how quickly can we get back to the building, to our regular functions, our regular programs, all of that, rather than seeing what I think, and this is my opinion, that we have just come into a new era and it's not going to go back. And that's an uncomfortable place for leaders.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But we've got part of the excitement though is that the new norm is not the old norm, and that it's going to be a whole new norm that's going to form around us, and that can be actually very, very exciting and very
but not comfortable.
It's uncomfortable, but
it's the also canoeing the mountain kind of thing as well. That whole thing that Todd Bolsinger did with canoeing the mountains. We've got to find a new way, and we've got to be collaborative.
Right.
It's going to have to be outside of just our own little cocooned group kind of thing.
Yeah, we need each other now more than ever, and we need people. You know what else we need? We need our children.
Yes, indeed.
Because they're the natives to this digital culture. We are the immigrants.
Yeah.
We're print people. We're Gutenberg natives by and large. So we need them. I mean, can you imagine what it would be to them, for them to hear us say to them, your church needs you right now more than ever? I mean, we're talking about 12-year-olds. We're talking about 13-year-olds. Your church
my
needs
granddaughter.
you. Yeah. And we need you to help us to understand this technology and how, what's going on. What is this thing about TikTok and why is it so, what is going on here?
Jojo, you don't know? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Exactly. Educate us. Exactly.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to get you off track, but that's exactly.
Oh, no, this is great. No, please do more. Yeah. So this is, I think, a key warning that I have. And the other warning is that we've got to, and this is so important for salvationists, I know, but I don't need to tell you this, but the missional focus is going to be the issue. How do we keep our people in a missional posture when the default setting is online? And how do we keep them in this missional consciousness and this missional understanding of life, that you don't go on a mission trip. Life is a mission trip.
Mhm.
How do we keep reminding them of that in this new normality? So, yeah.
Yeah, the message does not change. We don't compromise that. But the means by which we get it out, right? The methods. And that is, I mean, I'm sure it's true in all churches, but those become sacred cows. This is how we did it. This is how I'm comfortable doing it. This is how I want to return to doing it. And I think we miss a huge opportunity if we can't think differently and move differently.
Jesus had this, one of his favorite metaphors for the gospel was living water.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because water is a liquid, and a liquid is content that will fill any space without changing its content.
Mm-hmm.
So you give it, I drink coffee. This is my favorite container, right?
Mm-hmm.
But some people love tea, well, it's a whole different container. But the water, the living water, will go in either container without changing the content, And some people love this kind of containers, and my, when my kids were little, they had little sippy cups, and so the living water will go in any container. The content will go in. The content does not change. The containers can change. But the key is you got to keep the content so it doesn't change. So that's why I'm a total fundamentalist about content. The content is Jesus. Don't mess with the content. But the containers, you tell me what container you want, and I'll pour the living water into it.
Right.
Most of the church, however, they were fundamentalists about containers, but let's play with the content.
Right.
Sticking it here, no. So
It's polluted the water and made it sick. It sickens us.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, you ready for number 3? Are we okay?
Yeah, keep going. We'll do one more, and then I know we're going to pick up next week. So let's do one more, and then we'll pick up.
All right, good. So number 3 is one I'm really grateful for as well. And this brings us in some ways back to our Jewish roots, and Jesus was a Jew and was trained in Judaism. And here's the key here. The original venue for the church, because we come out of Judaism, and so, but the original venue for the Acts church was the home. And the centerpiece of the church was the table. And the new altar after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD was the table. And we've got to learn to bring back the table. And we've practiced the wrong kind of tabling it. It's the wrong tabling. It's the tabling of resolutions, and Robert's Rules of Order. I call it Saint Robert's Rules of Order, because we've made it such a saint, that whole rule system. But what we really need to table are relationships around the food and the conversation. And even the food industry gets this, Joanne. I mean, if you look at the food industry's gone from marketing food as sensual and sexy to family sharing a meal at the table. And sometimes you even see them saying prayer ahead of time, the grace over the meal. It's just unbelievable, this change. So we've got to start bringing back the table, and the most sacred item of furniture in the home needs to be the table. We need table time together. The Hispanics call it sobremesa, the conversation that takes place after the meal is over. And that's what the Last Supper was, after the meal was over. Catechesis, the growing of faith in children, can no longer be outsourced to the church. It belongs in the home.
Yes, it does.
The whole idea of children's church, the mentality of you teach my kids, that's gone. And I am so grateful for that. It's the parents' responsibility, the family's responsibility. The faith development begins in the home, and it needs to be in the home.
Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. And the whole thing around discipleship then needs to shift in how we're thinking about it, not as a program, but as relationships building into the parents who can then build into their children. Yeah, beautiful. And we would love to see more of that take place and a further shift in that direction. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We look forward to you joining us again next week, what you have for us there. I want to remind our audience that School for Leadership does offer a course, a 3-part course called Come to the Table. And it is a discipleship/leadership course. We invite you to reach out to us at sldleadership.com. You can view us on SLD TV with YouTube, or at SLD Leadership on Instagram. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Sweet. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and God bless.